Hello everyone, welcome back to Speculation Station. I'm your host, Captain Ketter, and today we have a special guest along with us. Goes by the name of Large Package. Say hello.
Hey, how's it going?
So today we have a special occasion where we get to talk to someone that's been around in Armada for a long time and who is a big name in the field. Um, and if you don't know him, he he's been around in Armada for a long time and shows up uh, on the second day of Worlds, especially last year, flying two ship, right?
Yep. Technically the third day, if we're being pedantic.
Right. Yes, I meant the final day, but I'm like on normal tournament schedules. Uh, so yeah, we've had a little bit of conversation behind the scenes about uh, some of the history of Armada. But why don't you tell me how you got started in Armada and how many years ago was that?
For sure. Yeah, I don't know how many years ago. I believe 216, 217. I'd have to double check the official release date. But I had the luxury of working for FFG before the game was made as an intern for a while. So I got to kind of sneak peek some stuff, but I didn't really start playing in earnest until it first hit the tables. And I want to say 217 was the initial release date, but I'm not remembering off the cuff right here.
Okay. Yeah, I started playing in 2019, but that was at home. And then when when I wanted to go play Armada out in the wild, that's when COVID hit. And then
Yeah.
eventually, after everything started letting up, that's when I got to my first tournament.
What was the 2019 release? Like, what was the release you started on? Was it Solist or was it after Solist?
It was after Solist, and I remember after I started playing for a while, I the Starhawk and the Onager came out.
Oh, okay. So you were kind of in that pre-Armada 1.2 bubble where you got to play like original Armada, quote unquote, for a little while, learn the game, and then you got hit with Armada, 1 point or 2.0 or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think I like 2.0 better.
That's fair. I mean, it. I think it's a hotly contested conversation because I think 2.0 as a rule set, personally, I agree with. They just went a little heavy on a couple of things, like the black dice thing and all the other common concerns. But overall, I do think it was better for the game. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that I took away that I really liked was I like to play MSU quite a bit, and so
Mhm.
being able to use my evades at close range really changed the game for me for the better. For
Mhm.
other people, I can understand why it'd be more difficult with the black dice, like not showing up for you when you wanted them to.
Yeah, I think the big thing was the change over to new Armada, quote unquote, was kind of the death of Imperial MSU. Like Imperial MSU still exists, but it really peaked in the Black Dice era of like Clonisher and those various lists where you really got that activation advantage punch with demo or something along those ranges. But with the change to pass tokens and kind of the death of the seven activation fleets per se, they definitely kind of segued to Rebel MSU or long range MSU seems to be the way MSU folks go these days.
I have dabbled into some CQB MSU with CR90Bs and Raiders,
Wait, CR90Bs and Raiders?
uh, like in separate.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, got it.
Uh, I really like an STB7 CR90B and
Yeah,
an X-Rex Raider.
that's totally fair. I've come along on the CR90B. I actually like it more than the A now. I mean, TRC90 is always good, but the just disposability and value you get on just a naked CR90 is solid. Or B, sorry.
Actually, that kind of brings up a question from me.
hmm
You've been around for a while and you've seen a lot of the development of the archetypes.
hmm
Are there any that you think have gone extinct?
The traditional super pickle kind of died. That was well, there's yeah, I don't know. It depends because extinct's a weird way to say it. A lot of things have evolved. As an example, like with the old school Reichen Aces, with the Avaris and on all those cards, they all got changed, and so the mechanic kind of changed with it. So it used to be the Gallant Haven kind of balls were the big thing, and then Gallant Haven got nerfed in the dirt, and Avaris got nerfed in the dirt, and then the Mc-80 became the kind of de facto carrier. That's what Kodo won with, I want to say, in 2018. And so that was around for a while, and then that kind of died off in the strategic era for the Super Pickle, which was kind of your Akbar one ship and a bit of support like Big Laser, and that was the Flotilla era time. And then that kind of changed because Flotillas got nerfed, and so then the Pickle just kind of died from that point. So I don't know what archetype that would be, but just the general existence of the pickle went from being like one of the most popular ships to I think it's probably rated as like one of the worst larges in the game now. So that one was definitely a doesn't exist anymore kind of one. I'm trying to think. That and as I was saying earlier, Imperial MSU.
I do think the pickle kind of died away with, uh, I would have to say the development of the onager because
Hmm.
you kind of you wanted to stay at a range where you were keeping people like at an arm's width away with the pickle, and
Yeah.
then try to just play objectives, I guess.
What was that whole release, the Onager Starhawk Agate release, really changed a lot of core concepts of the game. So, for example, you could build a Super Pickle, or you could just build a Starhawk, and it's like you could build the Akbar Pickle, but it might die, or you could just slap Agate on it. But then you could just put Agate on an Assault Frigate, and now it's just as tough as a Pickle. So the efficiency of the Pickle really kind of went by the wayside because yeah, you can make it really really tanky, but it has no teeth, and the points are at a weird spot where it's like if you make a command pickle, like a big boy pickle, you've got maybe enough points for like a squad ball, a CR90, and a flotilla. So you're like, well, why don't I just take all those points out of that CR90, take a second flotilla instead, and take the Starhawk or whatnot? Because the points just don't quite add up. And then if you take away from the squad ball, the damage just really isn't there on the pickle. So I think that's probably not helping either. And then obviously those kind of fortressing bunkering lists don't do super great into onagers.
Yeah. As a little bit of foreshadowing, something that we do on this podcast is we have an elevation section at the end,
Mm,
and we bring up one aspect of the game that we think could be elevated to make it either more competitive or more fun.
hmm.
And I think in the past, one of the things that we had said on the podcast was if we just give the MC80 a fleet command upgrade, I think that would like bring it back into out of obscurity, kind of.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I personally still like the oh gosh, I forgot the terminology. The command pickle, the cheap pickle, whichever the one the blue dye pickle is.
Yeah, that's a command.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that one over the red dye one. But the red dye one was always the one you got to see because of Akbar and whatnot. But I still think there's legitimacy in just using it as a carrier and accepting the fact that you don't have flight controllers because it's the most efficient way to push from a single activation rebels have, but nobody seems to care, and I think that's just because we don't have access to like a swarmable squadron in rebels outside of X-wings or Z95s, and I just don't think they're on par with the other swarmable squads.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm kind of theory crafting a little bit with the pickle, home one, and a bunch of hammerheads,
Hmm. Hmm.
and not slave turrets, but adding in maybe, well, slave turrets wouldn't be a bad option,
Mm.
but that would just give you uh, a lot of throwing dice out the front on those things. They're kind of disposable.
If you're ever looking for a good time, a buddy of mine came up with a list that I love, and it's not the most competitive thing, but it's super fun. You take home one and you take two liberties, and that's the entire list. And it's just so fun having those liberties just absolutely murder people while you have a like a completely naked pickle. It's literally Dodonna with home one and projection experts. And it's one of those if you don't have the kit to deal with it, it will just slap you in the face, and there's nothing you can do about it because liberties actually hit really hard with mods.
I like that. I like
Yeah,
that
it's cute.
idea.
It's cute.
I did try to put liberties on the table, like two of them with Garm or something,
Mm, hmm. Hmm.
and it just I don't know. I think I'm not too good at like two ship or something like that. It's I'm usually running around with a bunch of small ships where I'm trying to evade.
Mm,
So when I want to go in the teeth, I'm not as good at it. I think personally.
it's fair. Each their own. I mean, I think if we're talking two ship, the big thing with two ship is, in my opinion, it has to be you have like a good ship and then a support ship because if you have two good ships, quote unquote, they fight each other for initiative and then one gets hung out to dry.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Mm,
Yeah, I followed you a little bit. So you are kind of maybe one of the main people in what I think Matt or Fox from the Armada podcast calls the shadow meta.
yeah.
And you have something like two ship, but it's like two and a half ship or something, where you'll bring an ISD and then a support ship
Yeah.
and maybe a flotilla.
That's so. I think you're actually miss. Well, maybe not. I don't know. That's Andy's thing, Arc Welder. So
Okay.
to explain the shadow meta joke is during Worlds we kind of made a practice group, and it was myself, Jackson, Patrick, Andy, some other folks, And it was just funny because we always ended up playing the same thing where like Jackson would play Sloniger and Andy would play Oslo or Sloan, some version of ISD in 134. And I would play my two ship, which is ISD in 134 in Montana. The other guy in the group, he would play some kind of ISD in 134. And we're like, wow, we're just getting really good at playing against ISD in 134. We've created this shadow meta, and then we're just not going to play any other ISD 134, and all this practice will be a complete waste of time. And then ironically, every single one of us made day 3 of Worlds, and we're like, wow, it's literally shadow meta, day 3 of
Wow,
Worlds. Yeah, so that was the joke.
impressive. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
I
fun.
I knew one aspect of that whole thing, so
Yeah.
bringing that all to light is it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it was just such a cute little experience because we had never in our wildest dreams thought it would happen. And then the fact that every single one of us made it and all we did is practice against each other, and then we'd like set up across the table and know exactly how it would go, so we'd all try something different than what we're practicing or what we're used to, and it led to some crazy games. Like I played Jackson and we were doing my hyperspace migration, and he knew the tomfoolery I would do with it, and we ended up almost murdering each other where his onager had 1 health left and my ISD had 2 health left, and we were like ramming each other in the corner on turn 6, whereas in all of our practice games we just kind of 6-5'd or whatever, but it's Worlds, you got to go for it, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, it was a good time.
Was that on stream? Because I feel like I vaguely remember
No,
that.
my game with Jax, or sorry, with Andy was on stream. It was a lovely game. But no, the game with Jackson I played, it was the like bloodiest 6-5 we ever got, and that was the problem. Is it put me on the back foot, and so then when I played the Starhawk, I was like, well, I can't take a 6-5. I'm screwed if I do, so I have to go all in, and we all know how that goes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you've been around the game for a while. What kind of
Mhm.
drew you towards Armada?
Well, um, obviously working with FFG helped, but I love the tactical spaceship game. So I tried X-Wing. I'm really dog shit at X-Wing. I can't figure it out. I don't know why. It's something about the range rulers or something. But with Armada, it has that kind of naval sim feel where everything's in constant movement. And so it's in my brain, at least the way I kind of conceptualize it, I can see a couple turns ahead because everything's got that kind of like flowing movement. I know the ISD can either go here, here, or here. Like, yeah, there's different variations of where it can go, but the scope is much cleaner for me to kind of understand. Whereas like with X-Wing, the squadron could be over there, but then it could do 17 barrel rolls and be over there, and I just don't know what's going on. So I really liked that kind of game, and it also, from a purely community point of view, it felt like the gentleman's spaceship game, where it's like we all put on our silly naval hats and we pull out those crap sticks and we're pushing things around the board and being like, "Oh, good play, chum," like just that kind of silly nonsense thing, and that was so fun to me versus the like really try hard games like 40K or X-Wing or whatever.
Yeah, that actually brings up something I experienced a couple weeks ago. I put on a tournament here in Dallas, and there was a new guy. It was his first tournament, and I reached across the table to shake his hand, and he was like, "Oh, okay. We shake hands." And I was
We
like,
do
"Yeah,
that? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, we do this before every game. We shake hands." And I hadn't thought about it, but like, where did I learn that? I think I told the guy I originally think it came from like watching people play online, and they always
Yeah.
shake hands.
It's this weird thing, and I don't know how to explain it, and it's got such deep roots because it's even in the discords. So I play a lot of games. Like I used to play 40K for a long time. I'm big into Blood Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing like the Armada community. There's just something special about the folks, and I don't know if it's an age range or a maturity level or like we're drawn to this semi-casual games or what it is. But even like people on the Discord, yeah, we're assholes to each other and we do the standard things, but it's not the kind where we all hate each other. Like we get mad at each other for the razzings or whatever. Or at the games, like I can count on my two hand like count on my hands the number of times there've been like bad experiences playing Armada, and I've probably gone to over 200 tournaments in my career, and that's crazy. Whereas like I would be shocked if I went to a Warhammer tournament that didn't have some drama of some kind. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, for
And there's
sure.
just yeah. Go ahead.
I uh I don't play a lot of these other games. Like
Mm,
there's other ones like Bolt Action, Star Wars Legion, Warhammer 40K. I don't play them, but I listen and I keep up to date with like a
mm-hmm.
little bit of the drama, but a lot of the tactics going on just because I like learning about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always fun to look at a new video whenever someone's posting about some drama happening at a tournament.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I know I'm really bad. I don't want to start rumors, but as far as my understanding was, I can't remember if it was Worlds or like a Gen Con or something like one of the majors, but there was like active cheating in Legion, and then there was somebody getting like bullied, and like I can name all these bad things. Whereas I think in the entirety of Armada, there's been one person caught cheating ever that I can like know of. But and everyone's just there's just this like general level of respect that even when something weird happens, you still shake hands afterwards. You're still good buddies. And the way like when we call a judge, it's it's like a normal thing. Like you call a judge over and they make a range call and everyone's happy. Whereas if you call a judge in like Blood Bowl or something like that and a rules call needs to be made, it's a weird moment where you're like, I'm gonna, catch my opponent with their pants down with this weird rules call, or I'm gonna do a thing. Like when a judge gets involved, oh, it's a thing. Whereas in Armada, when a judge gets involved, you're like, cool, can you, check and see if this is range? Oh, it's not, darn. Oh well, let's move along.
Yeah, this is actually my first tabletop game, and so it's been a really welcoming experience to come into it. And then a lot of people that have played for a while will like give you pointers, or while you're even
Hmm.
playing them in a tournament, they'll be like, "Hey, you should. I'm gonna do this. Like, heads up,
Yeah.
this is gonna hurt for a little bit."
Yeah, or like people being like, "Hey, just so you know, before you do the thing, I have Derlin or I have Lando or I have insert gotcha moment, so people don't do that." Or like my favorite is this happens to me all day, every day. I always forget that you have to technically declare decaps before you do anything. And so like I'm activating my ship. My buddy's like, "Do you want to use decaps?" I'm like, "Yes, I do want to use decaps." And by all means, they could call me on it, but they don't. And like I'm a dog shit player when it comes to technically. Like I make mistakes all day, every day, and somehow I'm still competitive because my opponents don't call me on it. Whereas like I can't think of another game system that would be like that.
Yeah, the uh, the environment has been really good for me because I am competitive, but I am like welcoming losses,
Hmm.
and I feel like I'm learning each time I take a loss,
Mm.
and it's making me a better player. And I've been able to make it to like the day two of like tournaments before, but I haven't been
Mm.
able to win one. So that's my next goal for myself. I think is to win a major tournament.
You'll get there. It took me like 3 or 4 years before I started being useful, so give it time.
You mentioned you play like worked for FFG. How did you go about doing that? Because I know for myself, I'm like so interested in these games and how they work and
Mhm.
what makes them good. So, how did you go about working for a company like that?
Yeah, it's actually a bit of a fluke. So I went to a pretty dumb private college thing. So in Canada, we've got colleges, we've got universities, and then we've got these other kind of schools that are like technical schools or something, and they specialize in very specific things. And I thought like I like making games. I'm going to go for like game design for like video games or board games. And I went to this course, and it was a giant scam. But anyway, the long and short of it is, in order for me to graduate, I had to get an internship somewhere. And it had to be related to my field. And the problem was I didn't really have the technical skills to apply to anything useful to be an intern at insert video game company. So I started applying to board game companies thinking like, hey, maybe this will work. And so I applied to FFG because I have my dual citizenship so I could go work out in the States. And it was really cute because the application process for that is they were like, okay, write the rule book for rock, paper, scissors. And so I made the rule book for rock paper scissors, and I was dating a girl at the time who was an artist, and she helped me come up with this cool graphic, and I made this whole thing, and apparently I blew them away with that, like my rock paper scissors package. They're like, yeah, come on down, come be an intern. So that's how that all happened.
Very cool. So, did you have uh, any say in whatever you were working on?
Sort of. So there was a bunch of us, and we all showed up, and they're like, okay, so pick your top three things, and we're going to kind of move people where we need them. And apparently, X Wing was one of them, Imperial Assault was the other one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't have high hope, or not necessarily high hopes, but like the resource allocation for Armada was really small. And so I was like the primary guy for Armada. And then there was this one guy who was a floater who would help me on occasion, and then he'd go help the X-Wing guys or whatever. And then the most of them got put into Fury of Dracula, Forbidden Stars, or Imperial Assault because they thought Imperial Assault was going to be the bee's knees. Because hey, it's going to be Star Wars Warhammer. We've got minis and like foot soldier games, and it was the precursor. I mean, honestly, if they just did Legion first, it would have gone a million times better. But Legion was the hey, let's take the lesson learned from Imperial Assault and go from there. And so they thought Imperial Assault was going to be ground X-wing, and that Armada would be kind of a cool niche thing. But things turn out the way they turn out.
Yeah, I'm always surprised at the way businesses like decide what to do with their products because like let's see, Armada has had such a community that's taken so many hits and still just kept on running compared
Yeah.
to like X-Wing. They didn't have their many changes, and then I think 2.0 dropped, and then they had a mass exodus.
What and that I think that circles back to the whole thing I can't put into words, but the community aspect of it, where we're just good people or something. I don't know what it is, but like we're just so used to. I don't want to say being let down, but oh yeah, okay, X-Men got new stuff, but we got nothing. Oh, okay, somebody else got new stuff. Hey, we get like a one thing maybe every other year or whatever. And yet, ironically, that acclimatization to slow release schedules and kind of getting toughened up to disappointment made it to the point where we're like AMG's doing AMG stuff and we're like, oh yeah, yeah, that again, whereas the X-Wing kids are like, oh my god, stop ruining our game, because they're not used to being screwed over left, right, and center.
Okay, so going back to like what you were working over, what
Mm.
was there anything specific that you got your hands on and were able to put out for FFG?
Yeah, so I got the pleasure of working with Gurnas and Davies, and they were fantastic individuals. And one of the things that we do would be Gurnas would be working on production stuff or whatever, and he would give me some kind of like a task to work on, where it's like, hey, make content, make objectives, make this, that, make that, or whatever. And I would just kind of shotgun approach it, where he's like, hey, just come up with a bunch of shit, and then we would take said stuff and then give it to myself and Davies or some of the other folks who would float, and then we would test it. And so I came up with a bucket of stuff, and then droplets of it came out because that's usually the design approach. Is just here's a whole pile of things that seem neat in concept, and they got worked down and worked down and worked down and worked down and worked down. And there's so many things where it's like I was working on a thing and then I left and it became something else. And that was really interesting design to see. But as an example, to kind of more specifically answer your question, the Liberty was my baby. One of the things we were working on was we were trying to come up with a Rebel large. And so it's like, how do we make a unique large? Because ISDs and pickles are kind of similar. They got the redirects that contain the brace. Yeah, obviously side arc versus front arc, but they are structurally very similar. Like we've kind of set what the large ship looks like. And then we're like, well, what would be a cool kind of concept? How do we fill a hole? And I was like, well, let's try and make a pocket battleship, like something that feels like a heavy ship, like it's got the oomph of a heavy ship, but it's got like the health of something closer to a medium ship. And so we workshopped that for a bit. And we're like, hey, let's make a big Nebulon. Is kind of what it all came down to. So that's where the Liberty came to be. And then essentially a lot of the upgrade cards that came with that were my design as well. So like Veteran Gunners was my card, and a bunch of other small ones here and there, like Chart Officer. Think there's another couple that I'm forgetting. And it was also cool because when we were testing that, we were also testing the SSD. And so there was a bunch of cards for the SSD pack that came that ended up making its way to the flotilla pack as well as the interdictor pack because the SSD got delayed. One of the fun ones was Slicer Tools. Its original introduction into the game was as like I can't remember what we called it, but it was like some kind of special operative card. It was supposed to be some like a rebel operatives or like hackers or whatever you want to call it. And it was originally like you would discard this card to screw with somebody's dials, and then that was way too strong. So like, okay, well, what if you have to be in range? And then and then one thing went to another thing, and then we came up with Slicer Tools. And then it was like, oh, but where do you put Slicer Tools? Because like this doesn't make sense that you have this everywhere, but it also kind of does. And then the flotilla got released, and one thing led to another and got slotted in there. And Palpatine was another fun one. The original Palpatine used to be, I think it was 24 points. And it would be when a ship's attacking, you would exhaust Palpatine to either exhaust a defense token or an upgrade card. So he was supposed to be the like intel officer or way to deal with ECMs, because ECM was kind of the problem at that point. So you'd shoot the ship and you'd either exhaust their ECM or exhaust their token. So it was kind of like a not so good intel officer. And then that's kind of when I left. So I didn't really get to go any further because that was its kind of like beta. And I guess it evolved to, what you see Palpatine as now.
Okay. That's a lot. I think that's more information on Armada than the community's gotten in like the last year and a half, 2 years, maybe.
Oh, probably. I'm probably gonna get an angry letter being like, "You weren't supposed to say things like that," but I'll just play dumb or something. Who knows? It doesn't matter.
I think yeah, the game being discontinued and no longer
Exactly.
supported, I think uh I don't
I'm
know.
not too
There's
concerned.
yeah, I don't think there's much going on in the realm of Armada people for as far as business goes.
Well,
I'm sure
all the people I worked with moved to WizKids and or I forget the other company, so they don't even work with FFG anymore because of how unceremoniously that all went with AMG and all that drama. So
yeah,
yeah.
that was a sad state of affairs that whenever everything got canceled and shifted around.
Ugh, I felt so bad. I forget his name, but there was a fellow who. So a lot of folks when the AMG transfer happened, they didn't want to move to Seattle or whatever to work for AMG because they lived in Roseville, they had families and lives and all that kind of shit, which totally makes sense. But there was one fellow who moved out to where the AMG headquarters was, and he worked there for like 3 months, and he moved out for them, and then they fucking canned him 3 months in, and it's like, oh my gosh, you make this guy uproot his entire life, move over to work with you out in Seattle, and then you unceremoniously let him go. Like, that's so rough.
Yeah, I'm not a business person. I'm personally my I work in academia right now, and
Oh, nice.
so the thought of that happening in a business just is so off-putting.
Yeah, and like I'm probably misrepresenting it. I'm sure there's factors outside of my control, and I'm just jumping to conclusions like I tend to do. But there was so much poor management of all of that, in my opinion, from the outside looking in. That's just there was just a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of people who were left kind of out in the cold, and that sucked. But yeah, is what it is. On to happier notes.
Yeah. So speaking about the Liberty,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think, well, let's say Rebel Large is outside the MC-75 and the Starhawk. Well, okay, and the Providence. Oh, hello. We have a rogue Texas Honey Badger joining us. Say hi.
I think he's muted.
Oh, he'll come back.
Howdy.
There he is.
Cool. So just to catch you up, Honey Badger, we've had a little bit of a conversation where we talked a little bit about the history of Armada, some of the archetypes that have gone by the wayside, and then we're currently talking a little bit about development. Uh, Large Packages told us a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes, what makes Armada such a special game, and then right now we're talking about the Liberty expansion, which he had his hands on and helped develop and push out.
Yeah, pretty much just spilling the beans on all the FFG nonsense.
Very cool.
So
Well, I wouldn't have had much to add to the history since I started playing when pretty much nothing was developed, so
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
fair.
miss much, I guess. I look forward to listening to it, though.
We'll catch up.
I was telling him just a second ago, it's more Armada information than we've gotten in like year and a half, 2 years. I think it's pretty good. But
It's it's fun because I feel like all the people who have been around the block, they all have these dumb stories of things like that. And it's really cool because we forget about all the things that make the game great. Like every time I play with somebody who's new and they're still enamored by stuff that I totally forget about, it brings back my love of the game and being like, "Oh yeah, you're right, that is amazing." And like there's so many really cool things in Armada that we just take for granted. And so I
yeah,
love getting people's opinions who are new. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
oh no, you're fine. The most recent one, we had a new player a couple weeks ago, and the enamoring point was the dust field blocking line of sight.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's like I can do that. I can just hide behind this thing.
Go zero behind it and chill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's
Yeah,
this
but it
Liberty
only obstructs
expansion,
squadrons. There's a lot of weird interactions, and yeah, it just comes from experience. You got to figure all that kind of stuff out.
Yep, exactly. But it only obstructs squadron to squadron. Ship shooting a squadron is obstructed or is nullified,
It's
right?
blocked, right?
I think.
Yeah, but a
Yeah.
squadron shooting a ship is obstructed.
Is fine. Yeah, or squadron shooting squadron. Yep.
you can go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say one of my favorite stories I like to tell from when I very first started playing was I tried to use a gladiator with Insidious and
Mm-hmm.
the Grand Inquisitor, because the Grand Inquisitor, when an enemy ship at distance 1 to 5 changes its speed, you may exhaust this card to increase or decrease your speed by 1. And Insidious is the black dice in your battery armament can be used at medium range, and it only affects when you're attacking the rear hull zone of a ship. And I thought, oh, the Grand Inquisitor will help me get around and stay in the rear arc, or get to the rear arc and stay in the rear arc as they try and speed up or slow down or whatever, but it just doesn't work that well.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of. I remember a lot of folks when he first came out were like, "Oh, what a cool card," and then he's kind of pretty much binder fodder. I think the only thing that I've ever had any value on him with is you take him with QBTs and you're like, "Aha! You slowed down, I slowed down. You speed up, I speed up. I'm always slightly slower than you." Haha. But like, who cares?
I was trying to think of a way to use him a couple weeks ago, and that didn't come to my mind, but that's a good one.
But you were trying to say something earlier about liberties, I think.
Yeah, so I guess MC80s in general, both the command or the Pickle version and the Liberty version,
Mm,
they don't see a whole lot of play. And the Liberty in particular, um, I was, I don't know, in theory crafting, I've kind of had a bit of a stonewall because a lot of people want to use it kind of like an ISD, like you said, like a pocket
sure, yeah.
battleship. But is there an archetype that you think it fits into in the Rebels, like a nice niche?
It's less about an archetype and more about a dropping of conventional thinking. And so the thing is, and the reason you don't see Rebel Large as much is because of Torn Far. And what I mean by because of Torn Far is the rebels have so many good officers. You've got Torn Far, you've got, Lando and Durlan, the defensive guys, you've got the buffers like Ahsoka, you've got the squadron nonsense like Torn Far and Adar and Wedge. There's just so much quality in the support staff, but you don't have enough seats. Like if you take a large, best case you're sitting at 3 ship. So you're going to have your main battleship, which probably wants some kind of like an offensive guy. So you got like Ramus or Intel officer, whatever, which means you only have room for 2 support officers, and everything like the best value in Rebels is in that kind of support package. So it's really hard to play that way and use all the like quote unquote Rebel toys. So if you're going to play larges, you have to kind of get away from that and put Adar Talon and Tornfar and all those friends in a box and put it away and be like, okay, well I'm going to take Intel officer liberties or do something. And so if you're going to do that, you have to think outside of the box, because if you're just trying to make another ISD, well, Liberty's just going to die to an ISD if you lance each other. So you got to go like Radis or Riken or try and get weird with ramming or just find a way to like make it work outside of the traditional ways of building. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
No, I think it gives me more information than I had before, which, uh, like, I don't think there aren't very many people out there anymore that are going through like each of the ships. This is something I'd like to do in the future is
Mm-hmm.
go through each of the ships, kind of like they do on Cannot Get Your Ship Out, and talk about the quality of the ship and like this is the best way I've found to fly it. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
what I'd like to do. Just as like a little sneak peek, what I like to do best is I'll fly a Nebulon. This is just as an example, a
Mm-hmm.
Nebulon with auxiliary shields team, and then you just take an engineering token, you bank that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just use the engineering token after you get shot to move 2 shields,
Yeah,
and
makes
then you
sense.
just keep on trucking, and you try to go at speed 3, and after turn, I don't know, turn at start of turn 4, you go to speed 3, and then shoot with your rear, or
Yeah.
try to be in an arc where you're not going to get mangled.
I think the key for liberties is pretty much Patrick's got it on lock. You got to find a way to make them maneuverable. So it's either through Radis nonsense or Maydeen, but obviously Maydene's really overcosted. You got to find a way to use the fact that the liberties are fast and weird and outflank or do something strange, not just toot towards the bad guy.
Okay.
The double brace does help them. That's a pretty niche fixture on Liberties. I don't think any the Nebulons have double brace, but I don't think any other ships do they? I mean the
No, it's
SSD,
just those
but
two.
yeah.
The problem is Agate made it so everyone's a liberty, so it's kind of hard to be like, I could take an X with Agate or a liberty.
Yeah, I see Agate on Liberties with an evade and doing TRC nonsense.
Yep. For sure. No, for sure. And like honestly, like liberties, they're tough. They are a tougher large. But if you just go mouth to mouth, for example, with an ISD, liberties are 8 hull, if I remember correct. So it's 8, 5, 2, 2, 2. So I think their net, like their total health pool, is probably like 4 less than an ISD or 5 less than an ISD. And the ISD gets ECM, so you should be going tit for tat, but you're down 5 or 6 health.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you would have to bring a lot of support in order to make it in order
Yeah.
to make that 1v1 actually viable.
Yeah, I just don't think it's worth doing the 1v1. You're just not taking advantage of the cool stuff that comes in the Liberty. But
Okay.
maybe too strong.
There
Anyway,
is the one card I was really thinking about was actually the Liberty title. Like,
yeah, Liberty itself.
yeah, the one it gives you an extra squadron if you use a token.
Yep.
Have you ever seen that being used?
Yeah, so Nick Brown, he ran it for a while, and he had a really good way of doing it, where he'd run a similar to the old, or not the old, but the like Agate Gallenhaven ball, where you have some kind of bomber package like Skirgs or whatever, with Hera doing rogue stuff, and then you have your kind of screen. He kind of took that ball and he put it into an Agate list, and it was really, really good. Where you do, a tricked out Liberty with 2 CR90s, one CR90s Jaina's and the other one's Tantive. So Tantive is essentially doing flotilla stuff, giving tokens, et cetera, and Jaina's is sniping, whatever. And so because Tantive is constantly feeding tokens to Liberty to do Liberty stuff, it would either pop two Scourge to bomb and then shoot you, or it would pop Shara Tycho to get them to engage, and then so whatever would be remaining would hang out with Hera to get rogued. So you'd essentially have five-ish, or sorry, you'd have Hera plus two natural rogues plus two flex rogues. So yes, you'd have four non-rogues, but whichever ones you didn't rogue with Hera, you'd then push with the Liberty title.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've never seen that. And now that the Rebels also have Fenn Rau, you can push 4 squadrons with
Yeah.
just a token. It's interesting.
Yeah.
More than it can push with a dial.
It's yeah, and that's the thing. It's super cool, and it's a really cool card. And they're like, or hear me out, you take a GR75. And that's the problem. And that's always what it comes down to. It's like, why push with the Liberty when I could just take a Flotilla? And I think that's the kind of crux of Rebel problems right there.
Yeah, it makes sense. As a Gar player, I don't understand and can't empathize with having too many options.
Yep.
I like the combat retrofit GR75s, and I try to fit them in lists every now and then. But the way I think of them is that they're kind of like a another squadron because the flacking actually becomes out to be kind of useful because you're spreading damage over a wide area, which is normal for a ship. But then you can shoot on a ship, and it's 24 points with a scatter. So it essentially comes out to being kind of an expensive squadron. But then you have so much more versatility with it, and I think I don't know personally that's what I was trying to do with fly these guys. But the lists I had them in, I always had other stuff that was like getting in the way because I was running MSU quite a bit. So I think I don't know. Have you ever seen anyone use the combat retrofits and make it work, or is it just a waste of time?
I was about to say, if you're ever looking for a good time, my absolute favorite combat retrofit build is you take Bright Hope on a combat retrofit with Major Derlin, and you park it in front of a big ship and just be the most annoying piece of shit ever. Because you're immune to squadrons, essentially, because Bright Hope, unless they get in your rear, and you're immune to chip damage because you've got 2 points of damage reduction because you've got Derlin and Bright Hope. So they have to do real damage to hit you, or you'll just obviously scatter it. And because of the 2 points of damage reduction, it's actually genuinely hard for a large to kill you. Because yes, they'll shoot you, they'll do 6 damage with an accuracy. Let's say you evade that down to 5, you Bright Hope it down to 4, you Derlin it down to 3, you're still alive, and they just shot you with an ISD. And you're just peppering away at them. And so they either have to ultra overkill you, in which case you're a 35-point flotilla. Good for you. Congratulations, you did it. Or they ignore you and you're just sitting there confiring all day and you're like, here's 2 blues, here's 2 blues, here's 2 blues. Or you put slicers on it and you're a big dickhead or whatever you want to do.
I'm a little afraid of what we just unleashed on the community.
It's kind of like the Tua
The jerk Gazanti.
Yeah. It's a little bit more flexible because you don't need to refresh ECMs, but it can explode, whereas the ECM one is just guaranteed to not.
Hawk Tua.
Yeah, that.
No, I think I like the combat retrofit, and it's only 24 points. I think the thing I don't like about it the most is actually that it has a blue flag instead of black flag.
Yeah, I could see that. Tornfar obviously kind of makes blue a lot better. The other thing too, just to circle back, Yik was, in my opinion, the pioneer of the combat flotilla. He was an old Canadian player who got second at Worlds a couple times. Oh no, just one time. Anyway, very good guy. He taught me how to be good at the game. He would do this thing where he would take a combat retrofit specifically because of his objective suite. So he would have fire lanes without strategic, but he would put two fire lanes in one corner and one in the opposite corner, and he would put his little GR75 in the opposite corner. Be like, I'm just going to keep scoring this all day long because I have a gun, unless you dedicate a real ship to this. And then if you dedicate a real ship to it, you still have to deal with the GR75. And then now where there's the 2 tokens, I now have a huge advantage because you put a real ship to fight my flotilla off.
These are the things that I would never have known about. There's so many little tips and tricks about Armada and objective play that is kind of lost to the all of time. Just with there's a little bit of turnover in Armada with people just growing out of the game and then also leaving the community a little bit, which I can't blame them after some of the ways we've been treated, I guess, as a community. But yeah, those little things I like hearing about that because that opens up so much more options too for people.
Yeah, and I think the problem is, and in my opinion, the reason the game has survived and also stagnated comes from the same point. So competitive play, though the majority of players are casual, competitive play kind of drives the game. It's really exciting when people are like, "Oh, look who won these tournaments," or "Who's that guy who won Worlds," or "What are the cool lists," or "What's the meta," or insert all these things. It's the kind of driving force for everything. But because meta is obviously play to win, people are optimizing and they're optimizing and they're optimizing, and like just going back to that little flotilla I was talking about, that little annoying dickhead. He's like 38 points, and yeah, he's annoying. Well, a CR90B is also that price and will just get so much more done. And so it's like, do I want to run this little flotilla of annoyance, or do I want to just take a CR90B, which can probably accomplish more if I fly it better? And so the game, though being so broad and so vast, has been played and iterated and iterated and iterated to the point where it's like, okay, these are just more efficient. Like taking Tornfar is good, and 8R talent on a flotilla with boosted comms is like the be all end all squadron thing, and like Agate in this build and that build, and you have your dead set things, so that very few people end up kind of thinking outside the box and doing those weird things because they're not quote unquote efficient. But then at the same time, you get people who play off meta and come up with a cool thing to do it. And so it's like it's weirdly driving the game, but also stagnating the game because 80% of people live in that box of efficiency. And then there's that weird kind of like 20% that hang out outside of it and have varying levels of success.
I strive to be in that 20%.
20% is the cool kids club. It's just hard.
So, let's see. We talked a little bit about archetypes that have kind of not expired, gone by the wayside. Um, are there any archetypes you think that are overplayed?
Yeah,
I guess
well,
you could
okay,
say.
so archetypes and play styles, it depends on how you define it. And this is to shamelessly pitch. This is one of those things that Ark's been spending so long trying to kind of get into the weeds on is what is bad for the game and like what archetypes are too prevalent. And like just because something's prevalent, does that make it bad? And everything always comes back to the same kind of box of, well, I hate strategic, well, I hate Sloan, well, I hate Starhawks. And like Sloan, Starhawks, and strategic all seem like very different things, but in reality, they're the same thing. And it all stems from this: I'm able to hit you or do things to you or score points from you without any risk to myself. And so that's the big kind of meta play right now is you've got Sloan with Squall, who can attack you from a billion miles away, and like Onagers, who can attack you from a billion miles away, or these fortressing lists that know that like if I stay at speed 0 or speed 1 and I toot toot and we don't engage until turn 3 or 4, you can't kill me because you don't have enough time. It's this, there's no longer that risk reward. It's these really, really safe conservative fleets that are finding ways to score points and not give anything up. So like, yeah, that's only like a 80 or 100 or 140 point game, but 140 to 0 is a really big win in like competitive play. And so that kind of really safe conservative play style is kind of anathema to competitive play and is kind of a problem, but there's just so many ways of doing it. So there's lots of different flavors of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that absolutely nails it. I mean, and I never thought of it that way before, but uh, that is the summary of the game. I think there are a lot of players out there who want the game to be more brawly. They want, like, let's just
Mhm.
play 600 points on a 3x3 and roll a bunch of dice. And I mean, I like that kind of play style. My favorite list, Pizza Party, is just 4 ships that roll a bunch of dice. But at the same time, I even think that Pizza Party kind of falls into what you're describing because the way it's set up is you have to either come into this kill box that I'm going to set up with all these fats, or you just kill me with squadrons. That's the crux of Pizza Party, or you just run away. And so it is the like, if you choose to engage this, you're not going to have enough firepower with your ships to beat it. I think it's
Mhm.
the the supreme squadron list archetype.
Yeah. And it's just not, it's not necessarily even squadrons. Like squadrons is like 80 to 90% of it, but it's the I can hurt you or score points or I can do a thing without you being able to react. And that's the kind of the problem. And like those are fun games, don't get me wrong, they're kind of chess matchy and it's cute when you have two fortressy lists, but even Akbar does that. Like, and it doesn't look like it because he's not sitting in the corner, but he's, and like Ewok is a great great Akbar player, and he is the number one person who I would say is like the epitome of this style of that concept, where he does his little half moon thing, and because he has enough bid, he's like, well, are you going to give me advanced gunnery so I can blow you up, or are you going to give me farm 1 or farm 2? And I'm going to make my little crescent moon. And if you don't fly into it, I win by 75 points because objectives. So that's, a 7. Or if you do fly into it, you've flown into my Akbar kill box that continues to move away while you fly into it, kiting you and killing you. And so if you don't have a way to essentially outreach him, aka squads or onagers, he wins without really any danger. And so then the arms race becomes, well, like, haha, I have 2 onagers, so I can shoot you farther than your Akbar range. Well, like, haha, I have slown and boosted comms. And so it's that dance of range. But anyway, yeah, that.
Yeah, I kind of okay. So that also kind of makes me think a little bit about Anakin, the Salvokin.
Oh, Salvakin, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because that was the first time. Okay, I could take it back. That was the second time in Armada where I had played a game, and I had less fun than I don't know. Let's just say I didn't have a good time.
Yep.
The other time was
You're talking about our game?
oh what? No, what?
You can say it. You can throw me under the bus.
Going against Salvokin just in general was like not a good time. Um, because I felt like it was out of balance. The other time was when Two Ship was around with OG original price,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and there was no ace cap limit. So it was all the aces with Squall being pushed on me, and then I got eaten alive by an ISD, and I just watched my fleet wither away, and I couldn't do anything. That was
So
my own experience where I felt that way.
I have one rebuttal to that, and it actually goes back to our earlier conversation we were having about, how you were talking about how you like Armada 2.0 better. Say what you want about Armada 1.0, because yeah, there was balance issues. I'm not going to argue that. It was bloodier because it was the era of go first, and you'd have people like Carlo who were bidding 32 points at a tournament to go first, and you're like, what? Why are you bidding 32 points? Oh, that's why, because you just alpha me off the board. I get it now. And it was bloody, and it was this whole it was this arms race to be like, how much can I maximize so I can go first and kill a thing, or insert your price and insert your bail, whatever. But at least there was murder. Whereas now we've segued to the opposite end of that scale, where it's like, well, with pass tokens, the fact that I can guarantee like last activation or whatever, I can sit safe in the corner because I'm not worried about you killing me. And so they're opposite sides of the same coin, which I think is actually really cute.
Yeah. The other experience I've had, like talking about the fortressy, I fly away from you kind of play style,
Mm.
is there's been a lot of games where I have where we just toilet bowl is what like the Crescent Moon kind of is the same thing. You toilet bowl and then you're positioning, and you never actually end up getting bloody, which I think that ends up being really anticlimactic, and it's just not as fun. So
Yeah. And there's just not much risk. And that's why it's like I'm always so enamored by folks like Patrick or Black Admiral, because they find interesting ways to get work done. So like Patrick with his Radis, he will be sitting there, clenching his hindquarters the whole time waiting to drop, and if he misplays he gets tabled because he killed a CR90, but then he gets that perfect drop and murders you and there's nothing you can do about it. Or like Black Admiral with his CR90 list, where he's just all he's got is 4 CR90s running around doing mine nonsense with the various mine officers, or Mart Matin and whatnot, and trying to get direct damage and like ramming you and killing you through those like ulterior ways. And like those are so cool and not part of that thing. And that's like that 20% club we were talking about.
I did not get to see Black Admiral play too much. I went to Worlds whenever this is I think 2 years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched him play, and he was on the top table. Yeah, that was the year I think Jason.
Oh, Palmy
Uh,
almost won.
yeah, they tabled each other at the end of the
Yeah, him and
game.
Malador. Yeah,
It was
he so
wild.
I played Black Admiral day one, match one, and I was so confident going into it, and he beat me up. And it was one of those things where it's like I thought I was doing really well, and I thought everything was coming together, and he actually like complimented me on my squadron play, and I was playing Gallenhaven back then, and everything was going well. And then I ran over some mines I wasn't paying attention to, and everything just went straight to shit, and I got wrecked. And it just like set me up to just failure for all of Worlds. And I think I went like 0-3, got tabled 3 times in a row, and called it a day. And so he's on my like to play again grudge match list, but we haven't had our rematch yet.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
played him day one of Last Worlds, and I feel your pain. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's like, oh, this is fine, Oh, it's not fine.
Yeah, something happened. Uh oh. Yeah, no, he's good. He's good. I mean, say what you want about the guy. He's a good player, even if he makes you hate him a little bit. But he still knows I love him.
I haven't had the privilege yet, so one day.
Yeah, give it some time.
Okay. Well, something I wanted to circle back to was
Mm.
you mentioned ARC, and I probably should have mentioned that on the way in when I was giving my introduction of you. But you are on the board of directors, let's say, of the ARC community. Can we assume that you're going to be like the mouthpiece for ARC, or is that
Yeah.
just okay? Is that
Let
just
me
you for today?
let me take 30 seconds to first start off by kind of apologizing on that front. So our communication has been shit, and I'll own that. That's a lot of it has been my fault because our whole thing was we were kind of waiting for, AMG to do something. And so AMG hasn't done anything, and we're kind of being like, "Hey, we're here, but not really," and like giving really poor communication. So we're striving to fix that, and that's going to be one of those things. So come Wednesday, I don't know when this release is coming out, but Wednesday, we're hoping to do our full release where we release our builder. We've got our website. We've got a tournament coming up and all this stuff. And we'll do some actual official comms. And then that will be the kind of like go to. I'm kind of the mouthpiece just because I'm loud and obnoxious and I like to talk. And so I am not by any means in charge of ARC or the guy who's running ARC. I just happen to be the guy who knows everybody and talks to everybody. So it all seems like it's coming from me. But in reality, it's the people behind the curtains that run ARC. Like there's Nick Brown, who's our technical guy. He's the one who made the builder, and he's been instrumental in just creating all this really important kind of tech stuff and running the show that way and telling us what we can and we can't do and blah 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 blah. And then we got Larson. He's been instrumental in a lot of the design stuff. And then Simon keeping me on track and making sure, everything is actually functioning and fixing all our oopsies and being the actual adult project manager we need. So I'm kind of just the PR guy, but I'm not doing a very good job of that. So we'll fix that, I hope.
Yeah, you've given us a little bit of a sneak peek on this builder. Is this something that we can distribute on the video whenever I put this out?
Yeah. You can definitely distribute. So the official announcement's coming Wednesday. So even if you distribute it, it's going to be kind of locked because we've got various degrees of it. And so just to give a quick spoiler on that, and we'll go into more detail of this in the future. The builder is essentially our kind of way of communicating stuff. So what it is it's a standard builder, very akin to like Ryan Kingston's or whatever. But it's got versions of it. So you can use, the most recent Armada patch, whatever the current state of the game is. You can use, like an ARC beta. So for example, we're going to be hosting a tournament. And so we'll have, insert name of tournament rule set, and so you can change it to that, and so the builder will then cycle to those kinds of changes. Or when we release a release, like let's say we need to dial back Salvokin 2 when AMG does whatever AMG does, we'll have the ARC official rule set or whatever in there, and you can plug in that. Or if people want to run their own homebrew tournaments because maybe the Loki event has some wonky ass rules, we can hopefully plug it into the builder that way. The second part of the builder, and one of the really cool features, and it's going to open up, is there's also a card builder. So example is you can make your own content that way. So you can play around with your friends and do something or test something or work on things where you plug in some text into it, you plug in some art, blah, 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 and it poops out a card for you. We're still working on what that is entirely. So essentially that we have that's going to be the kind of bog standard, but it's probably going to come with a bunch of, ARC or Hollow Foundry watermarks. And then we'll have a quote unquote premium version to get rid of that. And then we can take that money and just put it towards our website fees just to kind of keep that stuff afloat. But the core of it will remain free, and you can do everything if you want free. We just have that little option so we can keep the lights on.
Yeah, you gave us a little sneak peek, and I was playing around with all the options over here. I think that was the thing I was most impressed by was that uh, you can like start from scratch and build your own stuff. So I know there's a lot of people who do homebrew, and there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people also who want to be involved in things like the next Armada wave or whatever that may be in the
Mm-hmm.
future. And I think every Armada player has a little Armada builder in their heart that
Yep.
wants to like build a ship that's like gets used by people. So I think that's really cool that you guys put that in there.
Yeah, and it's so the big thing with ARC is we don't want to be a homebrew guy. Like, but I mean, at the end of the day, everyone is, because once AMG does this final release, that's all it is we have community stuff. And so we wanted to make a house where it's like, hey, get your creative stuff out. Like if you want to go play with your friends and you want to try out a Blucher Hulk or I don't know, insert ship of your choice, or try, adding a command slot to a Mc-80, do it, try it, whatever gets you playing on the table. That is the most important thing. And so we really wanted to encourage that kind of creativity and play within the community, while at the same time we have having an engine for like consistency. where, hey, this is what TOs have decided we're going to be doing for Worlds 2026. Or if somebody's running an event like Endor, for example, we can put in the Endor rule set because maybe the TOs are like, you know what, fuck Jendon, let's just do that, right? And ban Jendon or whatever. And cool, if that's what Endor wants to do, we can plug that into the builder. And not to shame the other builders, but we're active and we're here in the community. So like if we have an event and people are like, hey, change this thing, we'll change this thing. Whereas like with Kingstons or Warlords or whatever, by the time those changes roll around, the tournament might already be 3 weeks in or whatever. So we really wanted to create an engine where people can kind of conglomerate either from a fun casual point of view or the consistent, arc rule set.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective, and I said this in the Discord also of it's got to be some kind of balance because I I think y'all are working hard, and I really appreciate everything y'all are doing. But at the same time, if you say, "Hey, this is what we're doing," then you're going to have some people that maybe don't like the changes,
Mm-hmm.
and are going to say, "Well, no, that's not how real Armada's played," and so it's going to be a tough spot to get people to agree. And I think kicking it to the TOs is the best way to do it. Like, hey, I'm the TO. I'm organizing this event, and these are the rules that we're using. You can choose to play in
Mm-hmm.
my event, or you can choose not to play in my event. But if you want to play organized Armada for this whatever, then this is what we're doing. And so, yeah, I don't know about how casual play is going to work on the disc, and this is putting the cart before the horse. But if you're looking for
Mm-hmm.
game, it's like, oh, what rule set are we going to use? Are we going to use the original, or arc, or whatever else? But I also see if people are playing competitive, they probably have a tournament in mind. I mean, people are right now saying,
Exactly.
oh, hey, I'm looking for indoor practice. And so if you have indoor coming up, you're going to know what rule set's going to be played. So, no, I think that's a great
Exactly. Yeah.
kind of mindset to have.
To comment on what you were saying there, like I agree 100% with what you're saying, and it's already kind of a thing because at the end of the day, most games are you talk to your friend and you schedule a thing, and maybe your thing went pear shaped, so you're looking for just play somebody else on the server, and you're looking for a random friend to fill that gap. But at the end of the day, you're looking for something, and like I know when I post on the kind of like the looking for games forums, I always post that I'm looking for a comp game versus a casual game because I'm probably trying out tournament cheese, and like, do you really want to deal with Donagers or Two Ship if you're playing your funsies list? Not really. So at the end of the day, I think it's really important that people specify what they're looking for because I've definitely had games where I didn't know I was playing a new player and I brought my worlds list and they had a really shitty 2 hours. And so at the end of the day, defining like, hey, I want to test this or I want to play this or I want to do that, getting that communication out first is actually just way better than dealing with it when you've already sat down to play.
Something you mentioned before, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, is the massing at Solus. So
Yeah.
previously, there had been some of these like events that had come out that by the time I had joined, that it was like past that time.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of brings up an opportunity, I think, where like you said, there can be specific tournaments where there's these little events or something where you can have specific rule sets. But I think that this is kind of going to turn a new leaf into a new era of Armada where we can kind of have something like those events like repopulate on the calendars,
Mm-hmm.
and so we can come back to kind of a narrative play alongside competitive play, and then uh, we can bring those two worlds together with this list builder, which I think is going to be really cool.
Yeah, and like this is me spoiling stuff, so don't take this 100% because this is like before alpha, whatever you want to call that. This is all pie in the sky. But we have so many cool concepts and so many cool members of the team who have these skill sets. And so one of the things that we plan on doing is as, come worlds to hand out some physical things to like hand out, cards or whatever. And also hopefully maybe incorporate that into the builder. Like we had talked about at one point, you make the card and you click a print function or whatever for a couple bucks, and that inserts a file that we send to one of the printers because a lot of the folks on the ARC team have had Etsy stores or done things like that, or like if you're familiar with Peter Sabers or Tournament HQ or any of those kind of like Etsy shops, so you could build your thing in the builder and then essentially for a couple bucks print it and you'll get a mailed copy of your cards. So if a TO wants to do a TO event, they could be like, okay, so for this event we're going to use the Sullust super thing, whatever. I don't know. I'm just naming some stuff. And like there's potential that you could make it on Holofoundry and then either print it yourself or submit it to one of the printing groups and bang, you've got content. You've got product to hand out again, because as far as we're concerned, like as far as we've heard in official communication, there will never be product ever again. So I'm not trying to push, 3D printing and making your own content and doing all that kind of stuff, but having a place where it can be done is a really cool concept and kind of opens doors for communities to create fun little things. As an example, if you play Blood Bowl, for example, as just like one of the ones that comes to my head because I'm familiar with it. If you go to events, they tend to have like what's called a star player, and so it's a random dude that joins for the event. So you can use Johnny, what's his name, and he's just like a fun little add-on that you can have. And so like tournaments could do that. And like, is that homebrew? Totally. And is it optional based on what the TOs want? Totally. And there's just so many options of what can be done on like this pathway, or we can just all continue to keep playing, the standard basic Armada, and both options are good, right? As long as people have things that they can do.
Yeah, what I would like to see maybe to mix it up. First of all, I think that's a great idea to, not only get some funds for the to perpetuate the website and keep it running, but also to provide a service to the Armada people because there's going to be a lot of people that go on there and then just make a bunch of cards and
Mhm.
whatever, blah blah blah, and a bunch of BS. But then to actually be able to get a hard copy printed out, and I think that'll be more thought provoking too, because people think, what are people actually going to want to play against, and what are people actually going to or play with, and what are people going to be okay playing against? So it's not just going to be, hey, this is my favorite character, and he's a 10-point
Mhm.
squadron that has 5 dice on anti-ship. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be more thought-provoking. But then also to talk about, like, and I'm curious to see what y'all think about this, is um, since the meta does kind of get stale because I mean, that's just how metas work. There's just some things that are more efficient. Some of these annual tournaments or regular tournaments, even, I think it would be a neat idea to figure out how to temporarily ban some things, either the highest performing or like the most seen cards, whether it's admirals or ships or upgrades or
Hmm.
the faction specific kind of thing. And I think uh, you, people aren't going to want to. You have to go more heavy handed on the Galactic Civil War factions and the Clone War factions just because they have so many more options. But I think if you said, like, hey, everybody that's in the top four, we're going to ban that admiral for next year, and then everybody, like, whatever admiral was the most frequently brought from out of all of them, will ban that one. And maybe you don't do faction. Maybe you just look at whatever's the strongest. If it's
Hmm.
Bale that wins, okay, yeah, you can't bring Bale, but that'll kind of incentivize different
Yeah,
play, different meta, and mix it up.
for sure. And what you're saying is really is awesome, and I agree with you. And so first thing I want to say a huge disclaimer, because I've gotten the cart ahead of the horse, or whatever the metaphor is, times 20. All of this is pie in the sky. Things that we're working on, things that we're hoping to do. We can't release anything until after Worlds, until after AMG does whatever they're going to do. And so bear with us. But what you're saying is bang on. And just I'm going to keep using Blood Bowl as a reference because they were the first living rule book that essentially, and to give people a quick little like, why do I keep referencing Blood Bowl? Blood Bowl got discontinued by Games Workshop, just like AMG did. And then the community took it over. They did this cool thing. They kept the game alive forever. They actually made it, they grew it, they created what was referred to as the NAF, and they did what the dream is. And then eventually Games Workshop's like, hey, people are still playing Blood Bowl. This is really great. Let's just make models and let NAF keep running it, and people will buy our models and will support the game again. So like that is the gold standard. Like this is the how you res your game and do the thing example. And so what they do is, for example, and like Euro Bowl and the World Champions and stuff like that, they have tier lists, or they change things, or they like balance some stuff because the core rule books say this character or this model or this rule set does X, and they make it a little bit better, make it a little bit worse to try and balance things out. And their statement is that banning things is a little bit lazy because people should still be able to use it, but you should balance it to a point where you have to pay to use it. So as an example, let's just say Sloan is the bee's knees and wins worlds, and all the people are playing Sloan. Well, let's make her 32 points or 36 points. So like if you want to play Sloan, you have to pay the Sloan tax or whatever, right? And those are the kinds of things where like that's where Arc really shines. That's where the rule set comes into play where it's like, okay, we have some tournament data now. We've got some consensus. Like, is Jendon too strong? Is Sloan too strong? What happens if we push those admirals up a little bit to try and bring it down, and then like maybe dial some stuff back, like Kenobi maybe being less points, and those kind of like points tweaks and adjustments. We don't want to change the core concept of the game. We're not going to release a Lucre Hulk and flip things on its hindquarters. But maybe the buff to or the nerf to Riken was a little bit too heavy-handed because you don't see that much Riken, or maybe Sloan needs to change, or whatever. And when we have data to support that, and we can work with the TOs, like that is the engine for success, in my opinion, at least.
I really like that. Yeah, just a points change even to, oh, this is too prevalent, so let's increase the points. Yeah, I think that's even better than banning.
I do think that that's kind of been the dream for Armada for a while now. We've gotten a little bit of adjustments on things that were kind of out there. Like I think there was among my community at least, people kind of considered the Onager to be too cheap for its effectiveness, and so seeing it get a points increase kind of helped balance things out. So, um, something I wanted to ask you was, what is kind of the vision for Arc in the future? You've mentioned a little bit about what they're going to be doing, but to what extent do you think they're going to be like pulling the strings in order to like in terms
Yeah.
of levity with how heavy-handed they're going to go against stuff, and then how often as well?
Yeah, I'm going to cut you off here because there's only so much I can say. What I can say is we will come Wednesday. We're going to announce a tournament. That's going to be our first kind of look at us. We exist. Until AMG does literally anything, we can't really say anything because let's say for the sake of argument, we do literally anything, and then tomorrow AMG drops a release. Like all of the data points are gone, everything has changed. Like it makes no sense, and they're currently supporting Worlds 2025. So it doesn't matter if every single TO and their mom wants to use, rule set ABC, it has to be AMGs. And so for Worlds this year, it has to be AMGs. For all the events that are leading up to it, like LVO and whatnot, they're going to use that course or rule set. And if the release comes tomorrow, or maybe it comes 2 weeks before Worlds, it is what it is. Once that is done, that opens up everything. And so all we can say is just like, hey, we're working on stuff, but we can't do anything until we know. Because, for example, let's pretend we decide, oh, Sloane's too good, let's adjust her to 30 points, and then AMG release comes out and be like, you know what, Sloane can no longer spend accuracy to do her ability, have to spend 2 hits. It's like, well, all that balancing is for naught. So until that's done, we can't do anything. As far as our purview and like what we're hoping to do, the grand scheme is to adjust the game for competitive play. Does that mean new content? Possibly. If people are leaving and it's stagnant and we're looking for new stuff, maybe we have to release some new content. Is it our goal? Not really. Our goal right now is to make sure that the game remains balanced and fresh. And if that means, we have to nerf onagers or, buff onagers, we have to adjust Starhawks. I don't really know, and we won't know until AMG has been like, this is the final rule set. What I can tell you is we're working on a lot of those kind of key tent poles. And so when I say tent poles, I mean things like we were talking about that kind of play style of that no risk, all reward. Why is that so good? And it's like, is Jendon the problem? Is boosted comms the problem? Is onagers the problem? Like, where is it? And we're spending all this time deep diving where it's like, okay, this is the thing that's bad because of this thing that's bad because of this thing's that bad. And it all leads to these like weird points that we're trying to adjust. A big one is objectives. And so we're taking a completely top-down approach, and we're trying to dissect each objective one at a time and like why they work and why they don't, because there's a lot of garbage objectives you never see. And then the same objectives get played over and over and over again. It's like, why did they get played over and over again? Can we fix them without ruining them? Do they need to be changed? Or maybe it's as simple as like, there's a points cap. Like if you only are able to score 150 points on fire lanes, all of a sudden it's not so bad because, you get 150 points for scoring it, but I still table you, like I still win. And like that's fun and engaging. Whereas, well, I don't care that you tabled me. I got 380 points on fire lanes, haha, and my one Corvette flew away or whatever. So those are those kinds of key things that we've been spending months. Like sorry, I'm getting off topic here, but we started a long time ago doing other things under another project name. But we've been really spending a lot of time doing those deep dives. And so until we come to conclusions and we have data points for that, I can't say in certainty what we're doing.
I think that it's very consoling as a someone who's in the community that wants to see Armada like flourish and move on into the future and kind of expand, and also have a Worlds 2026. I think it's a really good thing to hear, especially the objective clause, the comment you made, because that is something in Armada that has been kind of so repetitive and just circular. It's just everybody, if you look at someone's fleet, there's a like an 80-90% chance you know each of their
Mhm.
objectives.
Exactly. Yeah, honestly, as soon as we have something concrete, we will give it out. It's just until AMG makes a move, we can't do anything.
And being completely honest, the uh the amount of communication we're getting from you guys just by having a Discord and being active in that Discord is much more refreshing. And I think people will have a more appetite to like wait for something and wait for it to be fully baked
Mm,
rather than just pump stuff out whenever you like are ready for it. Just the fact that there are people behind the scenes that are working together to make something good out of some new update. I think that it's huge for the community.
hmm And just a little note on that, and to circle back to our poor communication of late. One thing we will be doing is come release day. We're slotting that as Wednesday. We're going to create two channels within the hub, and then hopefully, ideally, within the other channels, as well as a website or a place for contact there. We'll do like a news thing. So if you just want to know what we're up to, like it'll kind of like be like the content channels where it'll be like, hey, this is the arc thing, and we don't discuss it. It's a news thing. So you can just sub to that, or we'll have like a discussion page, kind of like what we have the arc thing now, where it's like, hey, here's where we talk about stuff. Because one of the big things that's been given to us as feedback is everything's getting lost. Like, hey, maybe we make a statement, we say a thing, and then 300 messages later, we're talking about how much we love ANG, right? So we got to make sure we keep those kinds of things clean and concise. And so we're gonna make effort to keep that communication good, but still have that discussion with the community in the various platforms.
Yeah, it's a great idea. That's actually something I did want to say was, uh, if there's a way, because I subscribed to the channel, the ARC channel, and then it was just way too many conversations I didn't care to read, so then I muted it. But like the Context Creators channel, where only content creators can post in there, and so there's no discussion. It's just, hey, here's what's available to you. That'd be a great addition to get ARC
Yeah.
news.
And then that way we can also say, hey, like, update to the builder, yada 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 has changed or whatever. Yeah. We have plans. And honestly, we just made the mistake of coming out too early because of AMG not releasing in October, and we just felt like, hey, we should, tell people we exist, and just didn't just didn't do it the cleanest.
Well, I am very happy for the future of Armada, and I'm also very happy for. Maybe I'll just spoil this little thing. It has dark mode.
It does have a dark mode.
I love that.
It's everything you know and love about the other builders with add-ons. It's a little shameless copy steely, but people like what they like, so we did that.
It's just like the next evolution. I think it's going to be an improvement. Drew, is there anything you'd like to ask before we wrap it up?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything I had questions about or anything I wanted to clarify.
All right, cool. On your end, is there anything you want to add for the listeners?
No, honestly, a big thanks for having me on the show and taking a second to talk, and just a big a thank you to the community. We as an Armada community have gone through a lot. We've gone through changes in companies, we've gone through lacks of communication, we've gone through really good content as well as really bad content. We've been in a sphere of ever changing stagnation followed by ridiculous highs and ridiculous lows. And the fact that we're all still here and we have such a great community is so huge. So just a huge shout out to everyone, like everyone who plays this game still, everyone who wants this game to succeed. A huge thank you to them, because it doesn't matter how much work people put into having events. If nobody's showing up, if nobody's playing the game, it doesn't matter. So just keep playing strong, keep building up your communities, keep getting those new players involved, and this game will continue forever if we put the effort in. So that's pretty much all I got.
I think that's a good ending message for everyone.
Here, here.
We are here.
Exactly right.
So at the end of each of our podcasts, we have a little section we call the escalation
Mm,
section. This is where we put together a card or an objective, an adjustment to the game to either make it more competitive or more fun to play.
mm.
So, uh, does anything come to mind for you? I mean, you probably have a lot of things bouncing around in your head.
So spoilers, but not spoilers. My favorite thing that I want to see is split faction. So as an example, we've talked about how GAR and CIS don't have enough stuff. But giving them new stuff is tough to balance, but we can give them old stuff. So an example of that is, why not make the victory titles work for both CIS and GAR? Why not make some of the squadrons that make sense to be dual faction? Like, there's no reason Bosk shouldn't be CIS, right? He's a Trandoshan bounty hunter. Like, that makes sense. It gives them a rogue. Let's split faction a bunch of content from the old things into the new things, because then it gives us new content without having to necessarily playtest it to the ninth, because we know it works.
All right. Not bad. Drew, do you have an escalation?
Are we changing it to escalation? I thought it was elevation.
Elevation? Sorry.
Why can't it be both?
He's
I did
right.
not prepare one for today. I was a little late joining the group, but I do like the split faction idea, because that's something that in theory is already play tested and balanced, and give
To a
Gar
degree.
an Architans.
Yeah, exactly.
You got some weird interactions because different factions have different abilities and kind of niches, but it should be seamless.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be some weird ones where maybe they don't work so well, and those don't cross over. But there's no reason why like Gar can't just get an Architan. Like, even, yeah, maybe there should be a Garkatan, is everyone always, that's the first homebrew everyone goes to, is like, let's make a Garkatan. But like, if you just take the Imperial Architan and you just make it Gar, does it break the game? But then there's the argument about the Kenobi and blah 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 blah. So obviously there's more to it than that. But why not? Why not try?
Yeah, I think Commander Kenobi should be in the forefront of everybody's mind when they're concerned about fighting Gar.
It's funny you say that, because we've had this discussion a lot, and I've had this discussion with lots of other people, and Kenobi is always the first thing. But you know what's more busted and obnoxious than Kenobi? It's actually Lumi. Because Lumi with ESTs and double redirect is far worse than Kenobi. IMO.
Yeah, I can see that. I agree. I'm working on a few different Lumi lists right now, and it, I like her. She's probably my favorite Gar commander.
She's the Riken of Gar, where it's like, because of her existence, the design space just gets so narrowed down. But anyway, I feel like we've strayed off topic.
No, it's okay. In order to make the game a little bit better and more competitive, I think that perhaps Squall should be only close range instead of close to medium range.
Yeah, that could work. Now, do you mean on the activation side or on the how far they can move side?
On the activation side.
Okay.
So that's the first time I've had an elevation where I actually like, I guess nerf something.
Mm.
So all my other elevations have been like improving something to make it more competitive and more fun.
Yeah,
This one's a little negative.
that was one of the things I learned actually in school, as well as working at FFG, is that raising the floor is better than bringing down the ceiling. Like, if you buff stuff, it has a better impact on the game than nerfing stuff. That being said, nerfing stuff is easier and often fixes problems faster, but it lowers the design space. So like, for example, kicking the shit out of Squall would be easy and like fixes that problem, but it's like, why not buff flight coordinators, or other various other things, but more work and more effort.
I just think that Squall is like stapled to the Quasar right now.
Nah, it's the worst of the titles.
I kind of agree with you. No.
The best is by far Pursuant, and I will fight anyone who disagrees with me.
That's the one I always want to take. Squall, I think, is good for alphas, but if you position well, you don't need it. So
It's good if you're a Dirty Sloan player. You know who you are.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna move my squadron speed 8 or whatever it was squad do speed 3.
Well, it's medium plus whatever your base of your
Oh no, they can move distance 2. So yeah, I'm gonna.
Is it 2? Oh, it's medium activation. You're right. My apologies. Yep.
Yeah, with the fastest squads in the game.
So yeah, speed 7 on 5s.
I would like. I don't know if I've said this on this podcast, but I'll go ahead and take a stab at one since I came unprepared. I would like to lower the cost of Akbar. I think 38 is way too many points for a commander. He's the only commander in the game that can go on a ship that costs less than he does. But I would like to lower the points of Akbar and make him MC only, like the other title.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that way you wouldn't get him on CR90s anymore. It would pretty much only be the MC80s and the 30s, where he still works very well, but I think it would be a better balance for him than making him 38 points, which is just ridiculous.
So this reminds me of a story, and I'm gonna go off topic here, but I hope you guys will forgive me. So Akbar was also one of my things. So when I was working at FFG, one of the last things we did before release was like, hey, what are we gonna catch? And it was me yelling about Akbar being too good. The original release of the game was 300 points, and original Akbar was only 30 points, and original, or sorry, 32. My apologies, 32 points, and 32-point Akbar in 300-point games was so brutal because you'd put him on 2 assault frigates with gunnery teams and intel officers, and you'd toilet bowl, conga line, insert term of choice, and you would just murderize everyone. So we bumped him up to 38 to try and deny that, and then the game moved to 400 points and it got weird. But I firmly believe that he's good at 38 points because he's still competitive even at 38 points. Like none of the other 38-point admirals were. Like Tarkin had to come back down. Thrawn would be garbage at 38 points, but Akbar, you still see him top 8. Like Truthy's still rocking him, Ewok's still rocking him. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to say that he wasn't good. He's definitely worth the 38 points.
No, I know.
I hate having a 44-point ship that can throw more dice out of its side arc at long range than my Venator can shoot back at it.
Agreed. That's a problem.
And it's got double evade. Like it's obnoxious. I think CR90 or TRC90 Akbar is gross.
Don't tell. Oh my god, I'm drawing a blank. Jason.
Well, shooting from the hip, I'd say that's not a bad take right there.
I like it.
Yeah, but knocking it down to only the MCs, I'm here for that.
I think that's cool, and I wish Exodus Fleet would be better. And there's just so much there, but yeah, I don't know. Needs to be tested.
Yeah, I feel like Exodus Fleet is it needs to be. I don't know. It doesn't need to be looked at. I think the points are actually balanced. Just people need to start realizing they can take it with parts resupply, and then it's basically like a dial
No, but the
that you get
problem
for
is all
free.
the other titles are so good. Like, name a bad MC title.
Well,
Actually,
literally,
sorry, don't talk about
Home
Independence,
one.
though. We don't talk about Independence. It's fine.
okay.
Yeah. Home one is fine. Y'all just lazy.
It sucks that you can't use it on yourself.
Yes, I wish Home one hit itself, but then it might be kind of really good.
I'm for it.
Anyway, we can, yeah, we can discuss cards all day long if that's what you guys want to do.
Are there any cards you wish did not come out?
Flotillas. Nah, flotillas are fine. That was one of my big sticking points. Is we were testing them back in at FFG. I'm like, this doesn't work. Let's not do flotillas. And they're like, no, flotillas are great. And the first iteration of flotillas was flotilla spam. And I still remember Tokra's first flotilla abuse was, I can't remember what the actual numbers are. I'm just kind of spitballing it. But he just had like 10 combat Gazantes and 10 TIE bombers and Tarkin. And so what he would do is he would con fire with every single Gazanti, and then Tarkin would say, y'all get a squadron token. So he would also then launch 10 TIE bombers, and you would die. And there was nothing you could do about it. Get fucked, flotillas. So I wish we had cleaned that one up a little before it started.
I do have a question about these generic officers, actually.
Which ones?
So, kind of all of them. Most of, I would say half of them don't get seen on the table at all. Period.
Yep.
And was that something that
That's
was
okay.
developed?
That's intentional. So, you need binder fodder. It's just really weird. Just like in Magic, you need bad cards to create a benchmark. Like not everything has to be viable. If everything is competitive and viable, it's actually weirdly bad for the game. So you need a certain percentage of cards for people to see like, oh, that's bad, or like to set that kind of level. And then also there was a bunch of things that were created knowing that they were going to phase out to help people learn the game. Like when Armada first came out, we were all really bad. And we made terrible mistakes and we didn't know how to fly. Nobody was there to hold our hand and teach us stuff. And so I like to refer to them as the training wheel admirals or officers, sorry. And they all exist. Like if you look at, wing commander and flight commander and all those jackasses who just let you change your dial or whatever, they were there for you to be like, oh, you don't just spam engineering all the time. Let me switch. Let me try stuff. Let me learn how to play the game. And so they were there to help with that or help new players play other new players and do all that and then get completely binned. It's just funny because they were meant as training wheels and garbage, and then ironically, the best admirals in the game are like training wheel admirals, where you have like Bale and Thrawn. We're like, hey, I know you messed up. Here, have a new dial. So that
That is an interesting thought. Yeah. When you're developing a game, that makes so much sense that you want to put training wheels on people. to like get them into the game,
Mhm.
and then once I don't know, they're still there for new players that come into the game.
Exactly. And
So that's good.
if you look at FFG's releases, they're all very similar. Like if you look at the core set of X-Wing, like the very first releases, like original Luke and original Vader and stuff, they had clean, easy text that was kind of good when everything was crap, and then it got completely wiped out because it allows for you to do power creep, which is important from game design because you want people to buy new stuff, and it allows you to have clean things that teach core rules. Like you don't break the rules of the game until expansion. Like that's when demo and all that comes out because now people know the game enough that you can break the rules. All the core stuff should just interact with the rules and help people use the rules to the best of their ability, like confire when they need to, or modify that confire, or get that little bit more yaw when you navigate, or whatever. So you're working within the concept of the game, and then when the expansions come out, that's when you branch out and you build that design space.
I love that. I feel like we could keep talking about this stuff all night.
Oh, that's great. I love it. I love this stuff, and it's really nice to talk about it because I was kind of not doing that specifically for a very long time, but yeah. So thanks for that. Yeah.
For sure, yeah. Thanks for coming on. I want to wrap us up so we can put a tie on the end of this podcast, and then hopefully we can have you on again sometime, and we can continue this conversation.
We'll do a part 2 one day. Yeah.
I do think Lark will be mad if I don't at least pitch his idea of, since you're a mod in the Discord, making different roles for different content creators so he can ping them.
So I think that that's a cool concept, and if a content creator would like that, they can approach me, but I'm not going to assign it to you without you being asked, because if, Joe wants to be able to ping you guys all the time and you don't want to be pinged, that's not fair. So if you come to me as Speculation Station and say, hey, we would like the thing, I'll give it to you, but if Lark asks me to make you guys the thing, I'm not going to do it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So reach out and I'll make it.
I do enjoy a little bit of reclusiveness because I'm an introvert, so
Exactly. And I'm not going to push that on you if you don't want it.
I will consider it. All right. Well, at the end of each podcast, we also do a little shout out. So, for the people of the community, if you don't know, there are some people who do homebrew and people who make campaigns. One of those people is J. Paul Mini. You can find him on, uh, let's see, you can find him in the Armada Hub every now and then. But he has developed a campaign for you guys to play, which is uh, anywhere from like 4 to 8 players.
It's very good.
It is very good. I've played it. We didn't get to finish the campaign, but I had a great time playing it, and I highly recommend people looking at it. Just even if they want to see what the campaign would look like, how the rules operate, and then also some of the expansion material that he created for the game. So I'm not sure where we can link that. I'll probably try and post a link in the description of the YouTube video or the Spotify text below. But if you're listening on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe, or leave a comment, and we'll carry on the conversation. Or ping us in the Discord, and we can communicate there. If you're listening to us on Spotify, thank you. I appreciate your time. But if you want to look at the images I'm going to be posting for a little sneak peek at the fleet builder, then go over to YouTube and check it out there. Thanks for listening, you guys. Again, thank you, Large Package, for coming on. You guys can easily find him in the Discord. He will be there.
You just yell some nonsense and I'll show up.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for coming. You guys have a great week. Take care.
See you around.